So this will be really fun. I've been looking forward to it.
Still connecting. Okay. Live on YouTube and
Excellent.
we're live on Facebook.
Perfect. Okay, welcome everybody to MoonDay Mystic. Today we are having a conversation with Kim Krans of The Wild Unknown and many other projects, New York Times bestselling author. I know it's weird sometimes to hear people, kind of list out your bio, but I am so excited to chat with you today. She's got this amazing new project coming out called Major Arcana Meditations, and it's releasing on the 10th of October. So we're just going to have a conversation. Some of my burning questions is in your career. But if you don't mind, Kim, just for a second, can I share with you my story of how I encountered your work?
Yes,
Do you
please,
mind?
Kelley. I love
Okay,
that.
yay. So I credit The Wild Unknown for the tarot deck, the very first edition, to really taking my tarot reading from something that was more sort of like a student and sort of studying the meanings and definitions and crossing over into this intuitive space. So I had been reading tarot and learning for about, I would say, like 5 or 7 years or so. And then when I was gifted The Wild Unknown, it was the first time it was almost as if the meanings of the cards were just animated, and it just really created this like real life connection, and I could almost feel it when I wasn't with my cards, them beckoning me. Like I couldn't wait to get home to try to see what they had to say, and it was the first time I really built an intuitive relationship with something. And I that was such a turning point for me, and I do believe if it wasn't for your art connecting with me in that way, I wouldn't have had the push towards mysticism, towards modern mystic shop. I feel like there was for me a time before The Wild Unknown and after The Wild Unknown, like when Dorothy was in The Wizard of Oz and everything turned to color. So I just wanted to thank you because it's such a meaningful experience for me. Sorry, I'm getting emotional about it.
Thank you so much, Kelley. It's a big deal for me to hear that from you. And the trajectory of that deck has always kind of amazed me. And I'm so happy to hear that it is a pivot point for some people. It was a pivot point for me in the creation of it. And I also hope that this next project that actually comes out like tomorrow, somehow it's October
Oh,
already.
yeah.
I hope that it deepens that intuitive space that you're talking about, because I think that was the reason I created the deck. And then the reason, 10, 11 years later, I created the meditations for the Major Arcana cards, because I wanted people to go like even deeper
Yeah.
into their own relationship with these cards, like things that can't be taught, but wisdom or knowledge that can be revealed through practice and really through like time spent with the archetypal energy of the cards. So I'm so
Yes.
happy to hear you say that. It means a lot to me as an artist. And I think the impact that we all have on each other, our practices and our art and our readings and our just whatever we're up to, we have no idea how it will affect other people. And the tarot deck really shows me that over and over. And it's important for us all to remember that, no matter how we're showing up, if our things are known or unknown in a wider field or what have you, really our work affects others. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is. Thank you. It is a big deal. And I remember actually seeing you at Rama in Venice, and I saw like the world card, and that's very specific. And then I was like, that, and then you turned around, I was like, that is actually Kim of The Wild Unknown. And it was such a synchronistic moment.
I
And
remember.
so, yeah, I was like, I let you have your, I think I didn't talk to you until after class. Maybe I hope I at least gave you some space to practice, but it was a really synchronistic experience for me. Okay, so this project, this Major Arcana Meditations, how did this idea come to be? You were saying it was through seeking a deeper connection with these archetypes. Can you speak more about that?
Sure. Well, over the years, I've found that the challenge is for me, and the challenges for people in general, to how do I get deeper into the cards? Like, how do I kind of go from just what you're saying, that Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, when things turn to color and it gets deeper, the dimensions open up. And that's literally what I wanted to do with the cards. I was like, okay, the cards have been existing in two-dimensional form for a decade. People are getting to a certain place with them. But I've found over and over that, you know, we all kind of look to Google or like look to some website to confirm our own understanding or our own experience of the cards. And I was like, we got to like break this somehow. And I think the way to do that is to spend more time with the cards, but it's hard to give people a map for that. Like, oh, go spend a month with the magician card. And they're like, what are you talking about? So I wanted to create meditations so people could spend and actually like walk into the space of the card. So the meditations, there's a soundscape that it's like instrumental that I created with my producer friend here in Los Angeles. So it's kind of like walking into the dream of the magician as a visualization meditation and setting the stage for that landscape, sitting down across from the magician and having an experience with that entity. And then it's very open-ended, like what does the magician want to project, express, send to the listener, and you can kind of have your own experience with the card. And then that's something you could do for the month, say, or you could do it once, or you could do it, you know, on the full moon for 1 year, and really be able to study these cards in a way that it gets deeper and deeper instead of more informational or more correct. So that was the intention. And when I started the process, it got really deep for me. It got really deep for me, which was surprising. I kind of went into it like, oh, I want to do meditations of the Major Arcana, and I know what I'm going to say, and I know what this card is about, and it's going to be cool. And then we were basically doing one track in the recording studio a day. And I had written and done practices with each of the cards before that to prep. And then we would go into the studio, do the audio and the soundscape. And when I started working with the cards, like in this way, it's like the deck for me opened up in a bigger way. And I was having this experience like, oh my God, you know, the Wheel of Fortune card. Like I remember having an experience with that card for myself personally, like 10 years ago. And just now feeling like the wheel of that card has come full circle, not related to the tarot, but more related to my personal life. And being like, wow, the wheel, what a big force in the world. And if you really start to tap into the slow arc and the magnetism of that force, and how we're all kind of on that track. And so I remember like pulling into my friend Kevin's studio in the car. I had to just sit in the car and like gather myself because I just was weeping about the wheel, you know, just thinking like, man, these dynamics in the tarot are so big. And no matter how long we study them, if we really kind of bow down to them and are humble, they will take us to a very deep new place. It's like a new land. It's exactly what you're saying with Dorothy. It's like Dorothy goes from black and white to color, and then you can see the next step is like she goes into like, I don't know what's it called, like VR or something. So it's just, it keeps going and going and going, and then it's like you realize you're just in the deepest dream of being alive on Earth, and gets more and more rich and dynamic. So that was where the process took me. So in a sense, the tarot is like never over, you know?
That's really beautiful. Part of my practice, and members of our community do this, is we find what year we're in, and then we align it to a card in the Major Arcana. And the invitation is to embody and work with that energy and that archetype for 365 days. And so one of the most prevalent experiences I had with that card a couple years ago was the Empress. And I had just ended my marriage, and I was redefining, you know, womanhood for myself and what it means to um, create my even my own living space in a way that it becomes an altar. And so I've had such incredible opportunities taking one at a time, like you're saying, and creating a practice for myself. And what's so interesting is whenever I do these new years, because in sequence, they kind of change a lot. I mean, going from transitioning from an empress energy to an emperor energy is really different. So at first it feels unwieldy and kind of awkward like a teenager. It's like, how do I want to wear this? And there's experimentation and embarrassment sometimes of like, that wasn't very graceful. But by the end of the year, it starts to reveal itself, like the deeper layers, and it starts to become integrated. So I can really appreciate that slowness and taking a time to experience a card, not just cognitively understand the meaning. And I think experiences are what is most transformational in like the
Exactly.
spiritual
Then we
landscape.
own it.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah,
then the thing that I experienced and now know about the Wheel of Fortune card, it's not teachable
right.
I couldn't have learned that from a teacher or a book or whatever. It's like it's just in me now, and I can't
Mm,
even find confirmation of that exact thing online if I were to
right,
look, but I don't even need to because
right.
it's like a feeling tone that is very, very specific. And once you hold that, then your own, scope gets more and more vast and powerful as a reader. So it's really big deal what you're talking about. It's the same as, you know, we all want to know so much so quickly, but knowing something deeper over a long period of time is like, potentially, and the sages said, like, that's what it's all about. You do the same thing over a long period of time without pause and with love in your heart, and then something will occur. So that year-long practice is like such a big deal. It's like I'm such an advocate of that.
Yeah. And for those who have listened to the last episode, we interviewed Claire Goodchild and it was about ancestral work. And her whole premise is very similar. It's daily acts of devotion. It's daily,
Exactly.
tiny deposits, tiny energy shifts over time. And you're right. We are in a culture and like the self-help culture too. It's like get the answers fast, transformation fast, change, change, change. But the subtle, nuanced change that comes with you practice yoga and meditation, as do I, over years, over thousands of practices.
Exactly.
That's really what changes you in a sustainable way. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's like that idea of like slow is fast,
Hmm.
which is very bizarre. But if you go slow and steady, repeating the thing, it's like that
Hmm.
idea of japa, like mantra or a relationship or
Hmm.
getting to know a person or anything. A year, to give it a year is really, it's like so beautiful.
Well, you think when you meet a new person too, right? When you meet a new person, you're not expecting. I mean, sometimes you have those fast friendships where it's a lost soul that you're reintroduced to, but you have to take time and
Yeah.
energy to get to know the person. I guess it's sort of similar with some of these practices.
It's so similar over and over. I was just thinking the other day, like the I think the most prohibitive phrase for a mystic is "I know."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll find myself saying like, "Oh, I know that. I know that mantra. I know that practice. I know that meditation. I know that card. I know that crystal." And it's like
Mm.
the door there's some like it's like the plexiglass drops down and you just get
Yep.
further from the thing. It's
Yeah.
protective. It is, because it's a protective device, sort of unconsciously, to just be like, oh, I don't need to actually be vulnerable or present with the thing, or just
Hmm.
listen and settle into it, or breathe with it. Like breathing with the Fool card. What is really happening with the Fool card, and the vulnerability of it, and the enthusiasm and the naive nature of that spirit. It's like it's very uncomfortable to just spend time with that.
Hmm. Yeah, especially the Fool. Sometimes it's anxiety inducing for people because it has that energy of anything's possible, really
Yeah,
anything. And so
yeah,
sometimes when that's the case and it's unnerving, it could be
totally.
literally anything. Oh, I
Yeah.
love this. I love how you've been describing this. I saw on your Instagram that you said that your teenaged self kind of expressed herself through this project. And I'm kind of curious about that, like what you were like as a teenager and how you invited that part of yourself into this process.
Well, even the photographs, I literally look like I did when I was 15, 16, and I left home early and went to art school. I got a scholarship to an art school. Very blessed to have had that experience, and I was drawing and worked with a very mystical drawing teacher for like 3 years, a very dedicated teacher. And I just like wore overalls, woke up early, drew, made music, was a little bit like art punk. And when I saw those photos of myself, I was like, oh, that's just me. There I
Yeah.
am. Like,
Yeah.
you can kind of get caught in, or I feel I've been kind of caught in the wheelhouse of like my career or different things in the publishing world and the yada yada and the fancy this and that. And it's like, no, I just want to be like making stuff with people that I love and about deep, fascinating subjects and, wearing overalls.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And there have been those moments too in my life. There was one pivotal moment when I was a kid. I would get taken to Macy's in Herald Square to see Santa Claus, and it was always this big deal. I was from New Jersey, and then a few years ago, one of some of my products were in that Macy's, and I could just feel my little 5-year-old self thinking that I was the coolest. You know what I mean? It's
Wow.
like, oh, she's doing it. She created
Yeah,
something in this place that my little kid mind meant making it, you know?
it's
So
so cool. And
I get that.
it's like those moments where you recognize yourself, your kind of a essential self, knowing
Mhm.
you were sort of headed towards something all along. And that's it's rare to feel that. This can be very
Mhm.
disorienting, especially in the arts and in mysticism and esoterica, to kind of track where you are in your career. Like, what is
Right.
happening here? And you'd think like, hitting the New York Times list would be some sort of verification. I actually didn't like feel much of anything that day. I was like, I don't know, is this what does this even mean? Am I supposed
Mhm.
to feel something? But like that compared to the experience of being in the studio and really feeling and recognizing myself as like an enthusiastic, uh, highly engaged artist that anything except for like a cool subject and some people
Yeah.
to work with that I love and trust.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
cool.
that those moments of recognition are a big deal. So I think it's important to remember them, like you're saying, and hold on to them.
Yeah, for sure. If you wouldn't mind, I do have a couple questions about the Wild Unknown, the tarot deck, and since it does pertain to this meditation album. Um, so how did you find tarot as part of your journey? How'd that find you?
I would say it found me through a kind of block, like by withholding itself. And I think this is common for artists. They make things because of like a rub or an agitation with things that exist. So
Mhm.
I remember being given tarot decks and trying to get into them. And I tried to get into them and I tried to get into them. And I couldn't get into the images. Like I was so specific, still am I'm very much in love with image. And when I find an image, I feel like I actually go into the thing. And I couldn't
Mhm.
go in. It was like they were closed to me, the decks I was looking at. And I would read the descriptions and get all psyched. Like, oh my God, this card, it means this. And then I would look at the card and be like, what the F? Why does this card look like this? It doesn't let me in. And I think that agitation, it's really important for artists and creatives and mystic and just to pay attention to that stuff, because you think of it as like, oh, there's something wrong with me, it's a bad thing, but actually all of that closure was asking me to make my own path. So I just tried deck after deck after deck, and I was like, I gotta freaking make my own, because these, like, now I look at those decks and I'm like, I can find my way in, but at that time I was like, these suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I respect them as major beautiful gateways to initially carrying the tarot forward. But at the time I felt just very annoyed and upset by it and blocked. So when I made the deck and getting the humans, out of the images was a really big piece for me in being able to get into the cards visually. So using landscape and using animals was a way that my mind could go in and in instead of being shut out and out, as far as like, who are these people? What are they wearing? What does their hair look like? And I don't feel like
Yeah.
that, you know, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't look like that.
That's really interesting. And also, I would imagine what's interesting about your deck to me is the use of color and the use of not using color in different ways. Was that part of, I guess that's part of your access point to it as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for noticing that kind of thing. At that point in my life, I was mostly doing black and white drawings with pen and ink, and then using color as a way for myself to depict energy transfer. So if you look at the strength card, you'd see a black and white drawing of the lion, and then the gold color just is used to say, like, to emphasize energy. So it's used in the lemniscate infinity sign on the forehead, and then it's used with the sun like blazing in the back. But it's a way for me to really focus, like, the where, how is the energy like speaking in this particular card, and sort of keeping it minimal and tight in that way. Now
I
my
like
more
that.
recent decks are much more colorful, but at
Mhm.
that time I was really just, I don't say like just starting out, because I had been drawing, you know, and in art school for, I don't know, 10 years at that point. But I guess I was trying to be very specific with the color, very intentional with having people sense like something is happening in the forehead and of the lion and the shape of the lemniscate.
Yeah.
Little like cues.
Yeah. It also seems like you used lines and the direction of the lines, whether they're horizontal, vertical, kind of going out in a similar manner. Was that also part of the thought process?
Exactly. It's like, oh, I get so excited when I get to talk about the actual like nitty gritty drawings, because some people think of me as a tarot person, but really it's like the drawing is like the heart of it. The tarot is one thing that I've drawn, but the
Mhm.
actual line drawing is my sort of heart of hearts. So my first drawing teacher was very into like, where is their energy in line? So she sort of taught me to train my eye and my hand, and the whole goal is to that the line holds energy, and the direction of the line, the speed, the pacing, all of it will sort of generate a type of energy. It will hold, the image will hold energy that people can see and feel according to what the line is doing. So in that deck in particular, it has a lot of like line, you know, very detailed line work in
Yeah,
that
I
way.
appreciated that. I think what helped me break in, I guess those other tarot decks at the time weren't speaking to me either until I ran across yours. And what I loved about it is there's enough information to sort of gear my intuition in a direction, but the scenes aren't so detailed that I already feels like that I know you're talking about, like I know what this card means or I know what it is. So it gave me personally enough to go on and then access my own intuition to kind of fill in the blanks. I don't know if that was your intention, but that's how it kind of translated as a tool for me.
It's so great. You're just like saying all the things that are really helpful for me to hear, because it's like I feel
Oh,
like
good.
that's my job description, is like create the doorway. Don't make it so specific that only a few people want to walk through it. Make it
Ah,
intriguing and magnetic, so enough people walk through it and then they find their own way. So that was really the goal with the deck, and still my work as it continues is like, and even these meditations, it's like take them in there with really specific sensations and images, and then go wide and open and vast, and let them have an experience. So
yeah, that it worked. I mean, it worked for me for sure. And I think that's like, I was actually just emailing, I don't know, we had at least a similar agent about a project for me, and it's tarot related. And I'm like, my goal is so that people don't have to use a tarot book, like to give
yeah,
them methodologies and get them in line with their intuition and get them in the ballpark so that they can kind of put the books aside. And it sounds like with your meditation album and through your tarot art and additional decks, that's kind of where it might be aligned on that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that would be the goal in general. It's like, so that, the tarot practice is really very deep if you go into it with that in mind, and that it can help train your eye to sense energy and meaning in image. It's a very powerful format to pair image with a word.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic kind of like bang for your buck format of artwork. So if the cards didn't have a word underneath, that would be very different. And if they just had the word and with no image, there's nowhere for the imagination to go. So the pairing of the image and the word is really, really, it generates more than the sum of its parts. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it does this really big thing in the imagination, and then you can take that skill. It's really a skill people learn by spending time with the cards, the images, and those words paired, that then you can take into like a museum if you're looking at artwork, and you can start to read in the same way. Where is there energy in this? Like, what is the archetypal resonance of this mandala painting or this portrait, this self-portrait? Who is that? What archetype is in here? What archetype was the artist working with? And then you can even start to apply it to, people and landscape. You can start to see more in the world, sense more in the world. And that's a really big deal. So
I never thought of that, about using that sort of energy scan, I guess, and
it's an
other
energy
artwork that is,
scan. Yeah.
yeah, that isn't directly correlated to a tarot card. But you're right. Like once as you're talking about meditating with these archetypes, and I'm talking about having experiences of these archetypes, you do see it everywhere. And I also encourage people, when they're learning tarot and you pull your card of the day, see how it actually shows up in real life. Like, if are you having like those feelings, those sensations? Because again, just like your meditations guides people through their unique experience, your day-to-day life, if you're paying attention, will show you similar themes and archetypes as the tarot. And then once you experience them, it's much easier to remember. It's integrated.
It's integrated, exactly. So it's super fun to do like pop culture. Like if you're
Mhm.
looking at like, where's the magician in literature? Like where is it in the movies? Or who is it? Who do I know in
Mhm.
my life that's magician-ish? Or
Mhm.
who's in a fool phase of their life right now? Um, who's occupying, who's going through a process with like the devil card right now?
Mhm.
Or where have I seen that in a movie or a song or something? Then it does get anchored. It starts to take on like a deeper, wider meaning and application, and it can really help with the readings. But also, it just helps in a deeper way, because the tarot works because it's anchored in those big, deep human experiences.
Yeah,
Tarot
they're
doesn't
shared
work.
experiences.
Yeah, it doesn't work on its own. It works because it's anchored in our lives, and it's universal and ongoing.
Oh, I love that. So now that you are sort of, I guess, a decade or so removed from the creation of the physical tarot deck to this meditation album process, I'm wondering if you use those as mile markers for yourself in your process. Are there similarities between how you birthed the Wild Unknown Tarot and then birthing this meditation album? Or can you see differences in how you maybe have changed your approach to creation and art?
It's a good question. It's an interesting question. I've been thinking about it a lot since making the album of the meditations. I would say it's the most similar like feeling I've had since making the deck, because the other decks came out after the initial success of the tarot. So other people were ready to like hop on board, and publishers or agents, and everybody kind of wants to get in on the thing that has a trajectory. And there's like this sort of confidence or ease in the process. And it's like, oh, this is efficient. This is what I'm doing, which is great. And I feel blessed to have that experience. But there's something really special about breaking into a new genre, discipline, format. And I had played music in a band. That was kind of one of my main loves. I was lead singer and guitar player of a band that was starting to kind of break in the indie scene the same time that the Tarot deck came out. And we did a couple US tours opening for big bands, and I had like the best time of my life, but all the money I was making from the Wild Unknown deck starting to come out was going into the gas tank of the tour van. And I was like, I'm funding this thing. I actually have to make a choice here. And at the time, I didn't have the capacity to hold both. So I picked the tarot because I could feel the trajectory that it really needed to be tended to, because I couldn't keep the thing in stock, basically. So I closed the door on playing music, for that whole chapter of my life. So this audio recording coming out is the first thing that's been released of mine music-wise in over a decade. And then in the spring, in February of 2024, I have an actual just record coming out with songs that I wrote and singing and chanting and instrumentation. It's very vibey. It's really cool. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
But so to your question and point, it's like I actually think these things are the most similar in feeling to taking the step to create the tarot deck, because I was going out of my comfort zone. I was sort of at this like funky moment where I'm like, I gotta just break free and do something new. And I think that those moments, although they can feel less supported or a little bit more like wonky than when there's a bunch of people on board and they're like, yay, make another tarot deck,
Right.
they're really rewarding creatively. There is mega energy there. So very grateful.
Is there a tarot card that you would use to associate with the experience of making this meditation album, that sort of like that gap between the sure thing and something new, or does it feel like something like that to you?
Well, I'll say two things. One is that my card of the year, I always do a New Year's Eve year ahead spread, and I do the one card for each month, and then the center card is theme of the year. I used my archetypes deck this year to do the reading for 2023, and the card in the center was the siren card.
Okay.
Which is the sound, the siren
Mhm.
sound is she's the one that like calls and has the magnetism through the sonic through her
Perfect.
voice. Yeah, so that was like, it's been interesting for me to just experiment with that. Like, what if it is the year of the siren for me?
Yeah.
And I allow that to come forward more and more. And then to go back to the question from the tarot point of view, I kind of still can't get over this Wheel of Fortune card thing.
Okay.
I'm still feeling like, just saying coming full circle makes it sound so small or like kind of like tied in a bow. But the experience I've had with that card over the last decade is just undone. It has just undone me in a way that I haven't been able to control or package in the way that I wanted to. I simply had to keep going day by day with practices and people and places that I knew nourished the larger path for me, the deeper path. And it has been really challenging, and sensing that wheel starts to come full circle and reveal its culmination and the origin of a new circumnavigation is like really moving for me. It's really it's just like a big deal to me.
Oh, that's amazing. And hopefully people will find whatever that is through your album, sitting with these cards that might be, that you said, like they can walk through the door to have a moving experience like
Yeah.
you have with that particular card. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
think there's just it's not often that we spend just open time, sort of open time and question with the cards. It's very, very hard to make that space where they're like, oh, I have to be journaling, or I have to be learning, and I have to be efficient at this. But the cards will work on us. There is that too. We don't have to work on the cards. You could take like one step to the card and it's going to take like 3 towards you. So that's kind of what these audio experiences are designed to do is, the star card moves towards you. It's looking at you. You're looking at the star is seeing you. And it's about that relationship. More
That's my
than I
favorite
know
card.
that star. I know Jupiter. I know, it's like, well, Jupiter's watching you too. So
It goes both ways. Well, from those who follow your work and your career, even your social media, it seems like art is something that you're constantly creating on a regular basis. Is that
yeah.
the case, or does it just look like that?
No, it's totally the case. I'm a little bit of a on that case with my art
Yeah,
making. It's
I
always
love
happening.
it. That's awesome. So do you consider that part of a spiritual practice or a creative practice, or maybe you don't even title it or label it as anything? What is it to you?
It's drawing is the best way that I can understand and integrate the world and my experiences. So I've been drawing, I think, every day to some capacity since I was really young, 14, 15, and drawing 3 hours a day when I was 15 to 19. So figure drawing classes and kind of a very traditional drawing training. And now I just draw as a way to understand what I'm trying to learn or study. So whether it's like, I'm kind of obsessed with boxing right now. So
Okay.
I'll come home from boxing and I'll draw the sequences. I'll draw the combinations. It'll be like 2-3-2. I'll try to draw what is that comment. Where's the energy moving when I'm punching in that configuration? So I'll use it in that context. Or if I want to learn a mantra, I'm drawing it over and over. If I want to understand a relationship, I could diagram it out. It's kind of like a way I can bring form or tangible sense to a lot of concepts that are hard to understand.
That's really cool. Thank you for explaining that. So, for me, I've got different sort of intuitive gifts, and some of them I've decided are for mass consumption, right? So I offer services, and then some of it is just for me. Like there's certain abilities and practices that I keep personal. With someone like you that is pretty prolific and creating art and it's coming through you all the time, it sounds like. How do you discern what is for public consumption, either just for free for people to look at, on Instagram, versus for purchase, versus, what's private for you and your practice?
It's such a great question. I don't even know the answer to that. Right now, I know I'm making a lot of stuff that people will see later.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll post a quick thing online, like in my stories or whatever. Artists are sometimes they have a gallery show once a year or whatever. But I feel right now I'm in this phase of like, it's kind of brewing.
Okay.
And I'm not in as much of an outward place with it. I don't know why that is. I mean, there's so many artists that, they never showed their work their whole life, and then it will get seen afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I have a section of my work that people know and they see, and then I have like all this stuff that I'm always like, there's this one series that I have going for a couple of years now, and I'm like, these are what people are going to discover when I die. They'll be like, oh,
Wow.
this is what she was up to. Like the subplot of Kim's drawings were like these gigantic, I won't even describe what they are, but
Okay, we'll keep it quiet.
yeah, I think right now there's like such a tendency, like everything has to go online. Everything's like immediately ready for consumption. But for whatever reason, there's certain things that I hold, dear. Some stuff is very far out that I draw these days. I do a lot of drawing after meditation, and during class, sometimes I'll sit in the back of like different trainings and esoteric, who knows what, and I won't do the actual practices. I'll just sit in the space and draw. And those are some of my favorite drawings, but they're very trippy, even for me as the person who made them. So sometimes I post them online and then I'll take it down after like 2 minutes because I get a little bit like, ooh.
Yeah, I could see that. Is it the like you're afraid that it's going to be too far out there for people, or does it just feel like a vulnerability, like overexposure?
Um, when you start to go deep into things, they just get deeper.
Mm.
And if it's not sort of held in the context of, or witnessed in the context of like a deep viewer, it can seem crazy.
Got it. I get it.
I mean, what people are experiencing in deep meditation, the kind of non-dual reality, where things get very vast and very open. In that field, things go wide, and it is it's just sort of taken out of context or without nuance and sensitivity, that can kind of be a wild thing to broadcast into the world. I want to get better at it and more brave, because I think the world needs it, and actually people are relieved when they see it. But there's also time and place for all things. So
that makes sense. Well, in our last few minutes before you take us through an experience of meditation, I did want to ask you about your meditation practice and sort of, like and how it is that you fold meditation into your maybe daily life. I don't want to assume, it seems like maybe something you do on a daily basis. So what's that look like for you these days?
Oh, I am just steadfast advocate of every single day practice, because we need it so bad. And we need, as sensitive people working in energetic spaces, we need as much bolstering of our energy, strength, protective sound, nourishing breath. We need it all so badly. So I am an absolute advocate for like not taking days off.
Okay.
That's just not a thing for me.
Okay.
That for me, that falls under like not giving myself food.
Okay.
That I need.
Yeah. And is
So
there a certain kind of meditation that you're feeling?
yeah,
What
I do mostly mantra meditation. So I do japa meditation, recitation of old texts, breath work, and I do Kundalini kriyas, and my lifestyle allows me to. I don't have like kiddos, and I live solo, so it's like me and my kitties in the morning. So I'm able to do the long practice, but I'm just advocating, any listeners, like, don't cut yourself short. Don't undernourish yourself. You need to have something strengthening you and your pranic force so you can do what you want and do what you're here to do in the world. That doesn't need to look like anything. It could look like just showing up, in a more present way in any given moment. But I just am a big advocate of some kind of something that's going to help build strength. And for me, that has a lot to do with sound. So chanting mantras, and try to play the piano when I can. And boxing has really gotten my vitality and life force back. So more rigorous exercise and breath work. But when I'm in the boxing studio, I'm doing mantra, and I'm really focusing on my nasal breathing, and kind of like put it all together in a collage, so the things that I've learned, and try to be open-minded to so many different traditions, but most of them come down to like breath work and sound.
Yeah. I love sound, especially for those of you that are listening that are like me, that are more clairaudient, and that's like a strong psychic sense. I find myself to be very affected positively and negatively, actually, by sound and sound current. And that's why I'm very interested in hearing your meditation album, because for people with that sense, it's really nourishing to have high vibrational sounds in your ears. It
Exactly.
really helps. It really helps.
And the words, even a practice could easily be, if you wanted to understand the magician card more, is to just simply repeat the word, the magician
Mm,
internally, or you can whisper it, and you're just getting into the sound current of that essence, and it will
mhm.
open up something.
Yeah.
The sound is very powerful like that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this is a great segue. It seems like you do have something planned for us. I'm thinking that it's sound and meditation based. So, would you like to transition into that portion of the event?
Sure. It's not sound based as
Okay.
much as it is just going through a kind of example of, I was going to do the star card actually,
Oh, good.
and I can just lead through like the audio, or the spoken word component of the meditation.
Yeah,
It won't be as epic as the recordings that you'll find when the album is released tomorrow, but it is a little snippet of um, the sort of stream of.
yeah, that's perfect. And
Okay.
before we get into the meditation, because I don't want to jolt people too far out of it if they're following along, where can people get this album tomorrow so that they can go ahead and grab it?
Yeah, it will be on almost all listening platforms tomorrow. So it comes out with HayHouse, and they were so great for this project, just like a dream to work with.
Oh, good.
And you can find it on their app. And I think, yeah, you can find it on their app. You can find it on Audible. I believe it will be on Spotify and all the places that you can find sound.
Okay.
And it's called Major Arcana Meditations. It basically is a 6 to 8 minute meditation for each of the major arcana cards. It doesn't go through the whole deck. It was just like so much content. But
Sure.
it goes from 0 to 21, from the Fool to the World card, and tracks that entire thing. You can listen to them individually, and then they have them put together so you can listen to the whole arc actually, and
Oh,
go
wow.
through it like a story, because it does really work as a kind of long arc
Yeah,
of the journey.
for sure. Okay, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Okay, cool. So listeners, viewers, we're going to transition into a meditation. So whatever you want to do to kind of get comfortable, you could lay on the floor, you could sit up, but you want to get comfortable in your seat in a way that your spine can feel relaxed, but lengthening, and that you could feel the breath in the body coming down to the belly. And then as you're ready, you can close your eyes, and we will enter the dream of the star together as a group. And we're on this kind of interesting format to meditate together. It might be different. How deep can we go when we're on Facebook Live or a podcast? But perhaps we just set that aside and decide together, we're going to go into the dream of the star, and we'll see what happens. And we'll come out knowing more than we do at this moment. That is the promise of the work. So closing your eyes, setting aside the concerns of the world, and we give ourselves to the celestial. and see yourself standing in a sacred meadow at midnight. Below your feet is the Earth Star, and above your head, the Sky Star. Night sounds surround you, and you hear it is time to rest. So you lay down on the earth in this dream, and you take in the night sky, softening your limbs and your face, chest and belly. The mind rests in the breath, back of the body touching the earth, front of the body touching the sky. And the stars that were once above you now appear inside the body. The entire celestial map glistening in your limbs, organs, joints, glands. And this glistening increases, awakening a familiar feeling, giddy, bubbling, a young, twinkling spirit that smiles and loves amidst all complexities. This starlight sensation increases until the whole body is giggling with light. What are the chances, you wonder, that I would be graced with this moment? To feel the stars within me and the earth below. What precision, this earth, those stars, and me. What magic, this earth, those stars, and me. You look into the sky and your eyes land upon a single star. Your star. It seeing you, you seeing it, across all confines of time and space. Your eyes touching your star. Imagine this impossibility. you deepen the breath and begin to awaken from the dream of the star. You return to the life of worldly things, still glistening. And as you're ready, just deepening the breath and coming back to the world of FaceTime and Facebook and blogs and stuff.
Ah, that was lovely.
Thanks.
That was lovely. You picked my favorite card. I try not to play favorites, but if I'm being real, the star has always been my favorite card. And anytime I look at a new deck, I look for that card first to see, if it speaks to me. So I love the synchronicity of you leading us through that, of all the cards, that one.
That's a good gauge because it's a hard card to depict. It has to have a certain kind of like celestial energetics, which is it's not that easy to even define what that is.
Right, right. Ah, that was lovely. Well, thank you so much. I think that does give people an idea with the addition of the soundscape that you created underneath it, of what to look forward to with this project that's releasing tomorrow.
Very psyched. Yeah, that was sort of a short, less evolved version, but I think it's good to always remember, no matter what, we can go in there and have an experience.
Yeah, I forgot what the words were, but there was something about, oh, what was it? It was like playful, sparkling. What? I can't remember what.
Tingling, the giggly, tingly.
Giggling. That's it. That was so good, because I think sometimes I put a lot of weightiness on cards, and specifically the star, because it signifies that sort of like that true. Always wondering, am I on the right path? But it reminds me of the hope and the playfulness too. That's the as a child, when you look up in the stars and there's not the pressure to align with the right one. You said pick any of them, just see what you see.
And like those tingles are the sign that we're on the right track. Like it's so funny how heavy we can get with this stuff. Like we close with this example, if you don't mind, a funny short story that I got done with creating the whole archetypes deck. There were a lot of archetypes I had to leave behind, there's only 70 cards or in the deck or so. And
that's a lot.
I got done and I realized, oh my God, there's nothing funny in this deck. There's no comic, there's no joke, there's nothing light in this deck. And that is a really important archetype. Like if you look at movie genres, comedy is a really big section.
Yeah.
You don't just have the tragedy and the drama. And it's like I'm oriented towards more like seriousness, like let's really get down to this. So I had to cut another card and then make a comic. That was the last card that I put into the deck. The editors were like, what are you doing? I'm like, we got to get the comic in there. And now when I see that card, I'm so happy because it reminds us like, oh yeah. And then there's also humor and jokes and lightness and levity and, puns and games that we can play with like language and our own seriousness that help like kind of break the spells of too much heaviness.
Yeah, for sure. Giggling. I love that word. I don't use that. I don't use it enough. Giggling.
Well, like it's so healthy to like giggle with friends and like your abdomen gets sore and there's a yoga teaching that says like your health, especially for like women, as they age and going through menopause, what have you, if you sweat and you laugh every day.
Yeah, for sure. And actually in Kundalini meditations, many of them have at the end laugh.
Yeah.
It's an instruction. It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, now laugh.
It's
Oh,
so
that's
good.
so wonderful.
I just
Mhm.
did a 62-minute partner meditation that we had to smile at each other and look in each other's eyes with like a teeth-bearing smile for 62 minutes. It was brutal.
Oh my
It
gosh,
was
that
like
is brutal.
it's one of the most hilarious things I've ever done. I was
Man,
proud of it.
some of those meditations are wild. You're
Yeah.
like, sometimes I feel like in those classes, like someone's playing a joke on me. You know, it's like
Yes,
we've got to be on candid camera if that was a thing. Like do these
exactly.
weird things. But it gets you outside of you're talking about it gets you outside of your comfort zone and it rewires your brain and it makes you more um, you know, malleable and all of it.
That's the work. We have to get our
Mm,
brains in new grooves.
sure,
We have to. Otherwise,
sure.
we just keep having the same experience. So,
Yeah,
hopefully we're willing to do that with the tarot. It's like I'm going to have a new experience with the star card because you know it very well, and yet there's infinite places you could still go with your relationship to that card. So it's like it's so great to have that attitude of like I wonder what else can happen with my mind and this archetype.
for sure. Yay, Kim, thank you. This has been just a dream come true for me. So thank you for carving out the time. I'm so excited to experience your work in a different format. And just for everyone. So the album comes out tomorrow, 10/10. You said you can get on the HayHouse app, Audible, any Spotify, anywhere that you can listen to music. And is there any other place you want to direct folks to keep in touch with you?
I mean, you can always find me on Instagram, Kim_Krans, and then KimKrans.com. There's news there and updates. But I think that you should be able to find things on most platforms and most bookstores these days. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. And check modernmysticshop.com. We've got all of her physical products. So if there's any decks that you piqued your interest after discussing the wild unknown, it's a great place to find the collection of art that you've created.
Thank
Oh,
you.
well, thank you so
So
much
many
again. Yeah,
years
you're so
of,
welcome.
of support and steadfastness with your business has been beautiful to watch.
Oh, thank you for that. That means a lot. And thank you for all that you've created and brought out into the world. And I guess we'll see everybody for our next MoonDay Mystic. So it's always the second Monday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next month, our whole theme is going to be about abundance and prosperity. And we'll be talking with the Money Witch in a similar format. So join
Nice.
us again then. All right. Thanks, Kim. Have a good one.
Bye.